where we've come from, where we've got to, and where we're stuck now, and looking to move towards. So hopefully you guys can have some suggestions for the places where we're stuck, and maybe take some hope from the success that we've had so far. So we're Alaris. This is us, all 12 and a bit of us at our recent work getaway, which was nice and fun. Thanks, James. I also help build Schoolbox. I am a system administrator, but I also do submit patches. They say I don't want to be a dev, but that's how life is. Now, Schoolbox is a web-based learning management system. So mostly primary, secondary schools, although mostly secondary. It's a learning management system, intranet, portal. We do a whole range of different things for the school, and we integrate with everything that they really want to use. And yes, we do support IE. The short way, yeah, we're the central online space for the schools. We do a whole range of different features, which means supporting them on all the different kinds of devices, operating systems, skilled technical support. But it started back in 2001 with my boss James, who's somewhere down the back here, at Melbourne Grammar School, building a specific platform for them. And then over time, slowly it continued to grow until when I got headhunted from Melbourne Grammar School to work for Alaris. And there were about 12 schools in production by the time I started in June 2012. And that was, when I started, was around the time I was starting to pivot the whole company, which previously did a whole lot of contracting, to just focus on Schoolbox. And looking to obviously scale that as quickly as can while getting rid of the other work. So what we had when I turned up, we were using SVN, but reasonably poorly and blowing away tons of patches. We had a single instance on the development server where everyone developed and tested at the same time. Again, so yes, I fixed it, but then Steve down the end broke it, and then we shipped it, and then it was unhappy. There were 4 different versions of Ubuntu running across the production fleet, a lot of CentOS, deploying with hardballs and very complex bash scripts, which sometimes work quite okay. I came from I was working at Melbourne Grammar previously, so I'd come from the client side of seeing this product, and I knew that there were frequent regressions before I got there. And this was even just in minor releases, which is obviously never something you want. Maybe a big feature release, but not quite that bad. And we didn't have really any full set of testing data to work with, which kind of hinders development, as well as sales trying to sell a product. Yeah, so we're a PHP dev group, primarily running Ubuntu, although we also deploy to CentOS. But we do now use things like Redis, Rabbit. We're starting to add WebSockets, and it's much more complicated than just the standard WordPress stack you've deployed in the past. However, when we're on site with these schools, because we do deploy to on-site servers, we connect to pretty much everything that we can on site to get the most amount of data, pull it all into our product to get the most value out of it. Some of these are big pain points for me, and we try and avoid them, but things like Kerberos and DB2 for SharePoint to stay away from. But some of the newer stuff like SAML, Twitter and stuff is not too bad. But we pull data in from everything. So in that time, we started to make some changes, not just software, but also workflow around the company. So implemented Git and a version of Git Flow, and using pull requests for peer review, which is a big step up in our code quality, and also really helped everyone get a good idea of what was in our entire code base. Because many times you come up and go, right, I'm working on this feature, I've got to fix this problem, and then forget that, or not even be aware of that it affects 3 other parts of the system, just because you weren't experiencing it on a regular basis. Got a full set of testing data as we could, which is really nice to get up and running. standardised on one release of Ubuntu and one of CentOS, saying that they had to be at least 5 years support. And we now, well, we use Vagrant, which is really good, and that's built by Packer and Puppet provisioning scripts, so it matches our, or very close to our production environments with slight action debug packages. But we deploy with packages instead of tarballs. So RPM's devs, properly signed, deployed by a Puppet. Our Puppet's a little bit different from most of the Puppets you probably get to work with, because we have a Puppet master that has all of our servers that we manage all around Australia and New Zealand talking back to over the internet, which is a little bit different from the other stuff. But what we've got so far is we've had a lot fewer regressions. In minor releases, in that time, which we've had about 10 to 15 minor releases, there's only been 3 times that there have been regressions that have caused me to rebuild a release. And they were massive ones, but it's only 3 so far. Much better deploys. I think it's a happier team by the feel that we've had around the office, which always helps. And we've gone from about 12 in production at the time to 35, 37 as of today, all across primarily a lot of them Victoria, New South Wales, but Queensland, Tasmania, South Australia, New Zealand as well. And good times all around, as shown by our work getaway. Where are we now? Well, I'm here, so I come as regularly as I can to help learn. But one of the big things we deal with is the servers that we operate are on site, but they're managed by us. Now, most times, obviously, when you sell to an on-site service, you hand it off to the on-site engineers, they look after it. Schools don't necessarily have the same kind of capabilities that we do on a regular basis. It varies greatly what they have on site. And unfortunately, here's a huge list of things that I can't control on a daily basis. Any one of these can take down the service, stop me from being able to do upgrades. Power is a kind of important one. Everything's a DNS problem, to be a bit classic. Internet connectivity is really difficult. We do use New Relic for monitoring. Pretty much 98% of the downtime for my clients, I cannot do a single thing about. Which is not good, because it's also seen by our clients' being the students, teachers and parents, as being a schoolbox problem. And not necessarily, oh, their internet's down, or I'm sorry you can't log in because their Active Directory services are down because someone put the wrong switch today. Now, some of our schools have got really good on-site support, great resources and funding. Others have got completely outsourced IT departments. Others have just enough to get schoolbox and really want to get the benefits that we can provide, but not enough to necessarily match it with some of the bigger schools who can afford the resources. So what we're looking at next, or somewhat starting on, the great dashboard meetup we had a few months ago was really good, give us some ideas about what we're building there. At the moment, mine's completely text-based with no graphs, so we'd like to get some of that stuff up and running. Automated testing is a pretty big one. We've got unit and behavioural tests, but we need more. And then we need to automate running them on a regular basis with feedback. It's at one stage, but there's more things that I need to do. I've written almost all of our Puppet code, which is not a great position being. It is at least visible to all the developers, and they can see we have had one patch from one of my senior developers at Amry, who's down the back, but we need to spread who can do the Puppet work. Introduce more DevOps. As my catchphrase, DevOps is a culture and not a team, which the boys seem to love my little stuff. We're not a full agile shop. We do minor releases quite frequently, up to once a week if necessary, and major releases 6 monthly. But the schools operate on a very seasonal basis. They don't really have any load on the servers after 5 PM. It just sort of completely dies off. There is no one there at all over the second half of December and January. So we could deploy patches all throughout that period, but they'd be of no use. So we kind of work with what our clients need. We are looking at a cloud-based solution so that we can offer both on-premises and cloud, which would be great because then I finally get to use half the stuff that you guys, most of you, you've been using for quite a while, and being able to control your own data centers and the structure and the networks and everything else that was on my list that I can't control. But I recognise that comes with trade-offs, that we can't integrate as cleanly or as much with our clients' on-site software as that we already can. And I've been playing with HipChat and some robots. But if anyone's got some good ideas on how to run Qbot, yes, I can see calls there. That'd be great help as well. I do have some pet peeves. If anyone knows any of this, please catch me afterwards. I get very peeved about Australia's unreliable bunting mirrors. I don't know if it's just the bunting mirrors full stop, but there's nothing like trying to do an update across all of our fleet, and I can't apt-get update. Very frustrating. Or GPG signing failures, or things. At the moment, although I use GPG signing our packages, I don't have a way of doing that automatically. Yeah, security versus automation. Yes, but if someone has some good ideas about that, would be great. Automatic upgrades of OS packages. There's a whole heap of stuff that isn't specified. It's just the low-level OS that should be kept up to date, and we can test and then roll out. I've got some bash scripts that do that. I don't necessarily like them. So if anyone's got some good ideas on how to do OS upgrades while still limiting stuff. We do have Puppet, but I can't feel like listing every single package on the system and managing it in Puppet. Seems a bit of a waste of time. I need to Puppet my Puppet Master. It's only 70% there. Basically everything but Puppet. Yeah, and the Puppet dashboard is there, but Puppet DB and everything else is done. And all of our production servers are pets, not cattle. Now, they're 80% cattle. And there's that last bit. Each school is different. They run different hypervisors, different network setups, network settings, and lots of stuff that we run in. So that part is still unique to them. I do have that list of values to a certain degree when they don't break them on me. But otherwise, the majority of it is puppeted. So if I did have a case where we had a Zen host server completely destroy itself, put on the base OS image, reloaded everything, set it up with Puppet, put in a few settings that I needed to reload their database and back up to full running in half an hour. And that's close to 100 gig of data as well, so the network transfer speed is the biggest stuff for us. So we're pretty good for being able to kill off our pets and recover them, but there is still that last bit, which is pretty hard. So that's mostly the end. As Mel says, we're not currently hiring, but keep us in mind at some stage. We've got 12 of us at the moment, but as we grow, and we're starting to grow quite fast, at some point we're going to need more people, so keep us in mind. Otherwise, I'd love questions, feedback. It's the first talk I've ever done, so hopefully it wasn't too boring. And it's fine. No one seems to be sleeping, so that's a good start. But otherwise, if you've got any questions or suggestions, I'd love to hear them.
Can you tell more about this Puppet framework? I've never done it before, so how exactly you automate with this?
With Puppet?
Yeah.
So Puppet we define, thankfully there's a great place called Puppet Forge, which helps us grab modules on how to configure certain pieces of software. So things like apt, MySQL, Apache, all these different base blocks, pull them together and specify this is how I'd like them set up. And then in terms of the connecting infrastructure, it's just running that catalog or manifest of design and applying it to a machine. The Puppet agent on a machine can just be given a set of manifests to run, or it can connect back to a server, ask the server, what am I supposed to run, what am I checking against. The Puppet ensures, in theory, that it's got exactly what I've specified it to be. And if it doesn't, I'm going to get alerted, which is quite useful for when people think they can change settings that I've put in Puppet on live service without telling me. So that's all fun. But the hard bit that we have is that our agents run on machines sitting in school networks that I have no control over the design, but connect out over the internet back to my Puppet master.
So if I have a Ubuntu production server with whatever 20 packages and all sorts of different settings, can I use it if I want to redeploy single machine?
Yes, very much so.
To use one of the methods?
Yep. In that way, you don't have to go the image path. You can have just a base OS and say, this is a web server, this is a database server, I've got my set of Puppet scripts that this is how it works. Apply it, builds it up, done, ready to go.
And where should you install the Puppet server, or what it's required?
That's probably a better question for someone other than me. We run it server-based, so we have a server that everything connects back to, which is great because I run Puppet DB, and I use Puppet DB for collecting more information than I probably should, but everything gets reported back for the whole configuration of our schoolbox, what versions they're running, which is really good for when I'm starting to pull out data for our dashboards, and it says, I show me all the servers that have got successful last runs and backups, those that have got failures, what versions they're running across the fleet, all that sort of stuff. So I get it all reported back. So we run it in that way, but you can just have a set that you go, right, here's an OS, apply Puppet, build my system, then take Puppet off it and throw it into production, which some guys do with the cloud, because you can just kill off machines and rebuild them very quickly. But for me, they're pets, so I have to treat them nicely to a certain degree, and I want as much data, so I run them in the full server with the agent running on a machine. The agent isn't light when it runs, so if you've got really low spec VMs that you're just quickly spinning up, running the agent on is probably not a good idea continually. I mean, mine runs half an hour. Graham?
How long does it take to actually deploy a minor patch or a major patch?
My process of actually building a patch and uploading it to our repos and doing that basic testing and running that test, it's probably about an hour from go to getting it up on the repos. Some of that is just because it takes about 15-20 minutes because we've got a slow upload speed. To deploy, I can say, because we use Puppet Dashboard for specifying what versions run all of our systems. So I can say for everyone who's approved for minor updates, which could be, say, a group of 16 servers they want to upgrade, change one value in Puppet Dashboard, and within half an hour they've all deployed themselves. Downtime for the machines during a minor update is the time it takes to restart Apache, which is usually a few seconds. And the only other step out is the slight difference between the database schema and the files on the disk, between files hitting the disk and the schema being changed, which again is usually just a few seconds. So minor upgrades are pretty good. Major upgrades usually work much the same way, but sometimes we schedule other work on the server where required, if we're doing some major changes or implementing some new software that we just want to check something. And so we might say, look, here's a half-hour window where most of the time it'll work, but there might be intermittent outages for a few minutes.
Sam, have you considered looking at using something like Docker for running containers on the destination machine so you can very rapidly deliver in layers of change and then quickly switch configuration over and
I want to play
large chunks down?
Yeah, Docker I want to play with a lot more, but I haven't had time yet to set it up and have it tested. But it looks amazing, and my discussions with some of the guys over at Docker have suggested that there's a lot of potential there.
You should really look into it, it's very cool.
Yeah.
So, related question, who's using Docker and Anger?
Yeah. Anger?
Always in.
So, by definition, yes.
Nice. Yep.
How do you handle network connections to and from the hosted instances?
Sorry,
How do you handle network connections between you and the hosted instances?
So we've got, they've opened up ports for our SSH connection for manual stuff that's secured to our IP, SSH keys and the rest, which is because we do get in there quite frequently and help them out troubleshoot. And then Puppet the other way has an outbound port connecting out for us. Other than that, it's just the standard HTTP, HTTPS at the moment until we introduce WebSockets, which should be in our next release.
What causes downtime during like deployments?
During deployments, mostly it's rare now, other than the normal downtime from restarting Apache, or in one particular case, some of our vhost files were a bit too complex to safely change with bash scripts, or if I had bash scripts, I wanted them checked before I restarted them instead of just forking the whole stuff. But those were only during our major releases, not minor ones. We used to have more inconsistencies between each server, which meant sometimes I had to be a bit more careful about what happened. But mostly now we're in a much better place and we just roll them out.
So on that, how much configuration gets to happen on each individual server by people who are not you?
In theory or practice? In theory, it's a managed black box. In practice, it's sitting in their infrastructure. They do have access to it. I don't mind if they go in there and look, but sometimes they go in there and say, oh, I do need to change something, and don't tell me, and then they make the change, and then they get the call from me half an hour later saying, so that change you just made, my Puppet reverted. What's this change that you're trying to make? Let us do the work for you. You're paying us, you've got a service contract with us to do this work. Let us do it for you. Let us manage to give you the best performance and results you want.
Or someone runs out and get an upgrade.
Yeah, that too.
Gets the customization before they need to have it.
Yes, that's another one too.
Do you use any automated test tools at all?
Only, we've got Selenium and PHP unit tests, but we run them manually. So
are your deployments like based on Puppet, or do you do it outside of that scope?
We do throw around the odd patch for really urgent security stuff that's outside of the release, because our time to build up the release and put it out, although it's a lot better than it used to be, it's still not quick enough for those little patches. But otherwise, I forgot the rest of your question.
Sorry.
Do you deploy via Puppet?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is each of your deploys tied to a Puppet run? Like you don't deploy outside of Puppet?
Yeah. Even if I want to run it, if I want to push something to a server faster, I'll log into the server and Puppet agent-t run.
Fair enough.
It all gets pushed through from Puppet and everything's in our Puppet dashboard, so it's just pick these servers, change those versions. We've got different modules, and so even then those are in separate packages, so I say, right, St. Patrick's, you'd like that mobile component, add it in Puppet dashboard, Puppet agent-t, it's out, up and running. I liked using packages, it was much more simple, and once you've got packages with Puppet, it just works.
Yeah.
Are you detecting changes that people make on those servers when they log in that are not covered by Puppet?
No. Only when they break things.
What do you do then?
When they break stuff, they
Do
get
you
a call
add that
from
to your
me.
Puppet catalog?
It usually, if they're breaking stuff, it's because they started to play in our database. And our internals of database are not managed by Puppet.
Yeah, what are you doing with WebSockets? How are you doing it, given that PHP isn't really great with WebSockets?
Okay. It's WebSockets is going to be a new feature in our next release, which is working on instant notifications throughout the system, throughout all the different clients, and some other stuff using Rabbit, which is pretty cool. But we had a choice. We could either try and use Node, aside from our normal PHP stuff, or use React PHP, Ratchet kind of stuff, which is actually async PHP libraries, which is actually not too bad. But you probably should talk to our senior or other developers who are down the back there if you want more detail than that. I get the overall how it works and how it connects. The deficiencies in PHP for doing that, I don't understand quite well enough.
Are you just saying that third-party dependencies are killing you? Are you collecting metrics about those problems that you're having, and are you exposing those to the right people?
Most of them has been, I know they had a hard time. The RNet mirror had some downtime issues and actual host problems, which was an issue. The GPG ones is been hard because I get 80% of our production servers from all different geographies working fine, and then one small subset just refused to for a few hours. But if that's the few hours that I needed to do that thing, it's kind of frustrating. So sometimes I'll manually just switch them to New Zealand mirrors, run it, and then switch them back again. But it does get very frustrating, especially when I try to do installs, because I need it all there. I mean, we do several installs a month now. I do need it all. It's tough, and we don't really have the infrastructure yet to try to just have our own mirror. But I'm not sure if it's just network issues that are not detected from the schools or hosts, or if it's that mirrors are syncing out of sync and only doing half a sync between the upstream mirrors or not, which I've seen before with some of the stuff I used to do, but I'm not really sure which way it's going.
Can you manage, for example, when there is a problem with the school itself, to get that alerting going to whoever is responsible in there, or you get the alerting and then you have to call them and
I get
all that?
There is quite a few times that I'll notice outages of their own systems because we integrate with so many of their own systems, with AD, SharePoint, their school management system. I've noticed when they've had half their AD servers down and they have not noticed. I thought, yeah, that error is still happening after a couple of hours. Maybe they didn't know about it. Call them up. Oh, thanks, we didn't see it. But then some schools are really, they've got their own alerting systems and they're really alert to it. Others, it's like, we had no idea that things were falling over. So I get the alerts. I'm looking at starting to feed some of them back, but I'm not sure how that's going to work best for them to be able to actually work with them as well. At the moment, I get a lot of alerts for just 5-10 minutes of downtime, which for a lot of these schools would be more likely that all the kids trying to use YouTube going out and it's just chewed up the whole pipe, as opposed to any other network infrastructure problems.
So what would you say you spend most of your time doing that you would like to automate away? Or you think should be automated away?
Should be automated away? Issues that I've already fixed that have been deployed. So I'd like to have those deployed out faster, because we can have a fix. And even though the time's a lot shorter now, I get a lot of time spending on calls and answering tickets, along with the rest of my support team, on stuff that we know has either got a fix, or will shortly have a fix and we can't do the full build, test it all, make sure it's ready, then put it out again. And so the automated testing part is going to be a big factor in that. Then I also need to write the tests and automate them. And then the second part of that being automatic building of the packages, which will also then require signing them into the repositories. So that part is probably the bit that hurts me the most. Although the little ones are all pet peeves. Yeah, automated testing is definitely the big one. Once we go to our cloud edition, we're going to want to be able to release faster for that as well. Or release faster, also release features. So that part certainly hurts me.
Cool. Thanks to Sam.